So, colleagues, there's a story that has been told, and it emanated from a poem. And let me just share it. It's quite a rhetorical thing. Just bear with me, but it doesn't really last for more than a minute, if anything. It speaks about four individuals who are named, and their names are everybody, somebody, nobody, and anybody. So these four individuals had a task to fulfill, meaning there was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought that anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. So it ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. So this poem plays around issues of accountability, and central to what really brings here today. That if we think everybody's job will be done, we are wrong. And if we think anybody's job will be done, we are wrong. There has to be names attached to every task in the industry. Somebody must sign some sort of oath to say, I'm the one who took the responsibility to do this. It has nothing to do with my feelings. It has nothing to do with my preferences, but it has to be done, and that task is attached to my name. I think we all observed somebody who decided that they are signing a law that I'm not agreeing with, and I'm not going. And ultimately, that law sits in that person's name. And they will have to do it whether they like it or not. So I hope if there's a theme to adopt, we are taking it that everybody who is here has something to run out with, and it has a date that it must be delivered with. And let's continue to deliver those things. I'm going to just welcome the president of BBC, Mr. Elias Monache, to give us supporting remarks for today. And I think because we are done with breakfast, this doesn't mean that all animals are equal and others have four legs. It just means we are observing order, that we help the BBC president to rise. TG, they were still eating at the time. Let's all please rise and welcome the BBC president.
You may be seated. Morning, colleagues. Good morning. Good morning. Let me acknowledge the program director and I guess qualify that I'm not one of those people that creates commission over a commission and a committee over another committee. I'm raising this matter because at times people tend to think that to run an organization, you run it by committees. You don't. Any organization is run by action-orientated program. I'm paraphrasing that, colleagues, so that we need then to understand the context in which we're meeting here today. And before I proceed, I want to acknowledge the leadership of the Bbcbe. led by the Deputy President, Bafana Dube, and other members of the executive, and including the sponsors of today's event. You'll agree with me that the manner in which this industry have evolved over the years is such that we have lost major components of this industry. And I'll qualify why I'm saying that, because if today were then to reflect 20 years ago, how the outlook of this industry compared to today is chalk and cheese. If we're then to reflect how many big companies in the built environment we have today in comparison to 20 years ago, again, it's chalk and cheese. And it must then tell you something and resonate with the current trends that we're faced with. And therefore, it then requires a different plan, a different strategy in terms of how then do we deal with these matters. If today we're then to say Marie and Roberts used to employ thousands and thousands of people, and they had an integrated strategy from steel to construction to various other things, ask yourself today, is Marie and Roberts still the same? Today, the answer is no. I'm raising these issues not because I hate Marie and Roberts. I'm just using Marie and Roberts as a case study to say the way the industry have evolved for the past years and today is chalk and cheese. And therefore, it then requires a different standing, a different way of addressing and dealing with the challenges that the industry is faced with. Because in the absence of doing that, Bafana, we might then lose the game plan. You know, in war, you know, if you read The Art of War, you need then to understand the art, you need then to understand what are the issues that you are faced with, and therefore we then develop a clear strategy and plan to execute. That deals with the plan and the action a program director, because in the absence of understanding, it then becomes difficult to deal with the execution and the action thereof. I'm raising that point is because at the heart of where we are today, as outlined by the TG, is that firstly, we are operating within the ambit of the Public Procurement Act that was signed by the state president. But that act does not have the regulation. Now, in the absence of the regulation, the country does not wait for us to deal with the regulations. And I'm raising that point is because it then means we need then to move with speed. Because if we don't move with speed, things don't wait for us because there are no regulation. I'm raising this point because recently, Eskom have awarded 5 companies that they are all overseas companies to supply and manufacture and install transformers at the value of 7 billion rand. You then ask yourself, why are we not then waiting for the regulation so that we can then effect the procurement? Because we've just signed and concluded a procurement act. That must then give effect in terms of how state must then procure various products and services in the country, whether in the basis of addressing localization designation, black industrialists, people living with disabilities, and set aside. Because the current act deals with those areas and issues. And hence I'm saying we need to move with speed because things don't wait for us. You know, there is a say that in African idioms, so you know when you are asleep, nobody will wake you up to say it's time to eat. When you are asleep, you are asleep, and things move ahead. Those who travel frequently, I'm not referring to Kulula or Mengo or safe air. Because those ones, if you are sleeping, they wake you up because they are selling. This is a tuck shop. But normally in flights, if you are sleeping, the flight attendants, they don't wake you up, isn't it? Now it's the same principle that I'm saying. If we are then sleeping, people, they don't wait for us. They're not going to wake us up to say, wake up, it's time for you then to submit whatever proposal that we need them to look at. I'm raising that point is because the 7 billion rand at the heart of the transformer business is taking place where the country is yelling for employment. On the other side of the fence, there is a company that is under business rescue that is 77 years old. That employ more than 2,000 people. I'm saying it's under business rescue. And in the next coming few weeks or not, if it's not rescued, it will then close down, and then we continue buying transformers overseas, despite the fact that we have a procurement act that deals with state procurement from local entities. Let me then move from that and come to the second part. In the rail infrastructure, there is what is called the South Rail Corridor. That corridor, it has 2 legs. The first one is the automotive one that moves from Roslyn to Kucha, which is a port, and the other leg, it moved from Roslyn via the Art, Kimberley, and to Kucha. That is a manganese line, and that line requires 10 billion rand to be rebuilt. Now, you then ask yourself, is that process open for local companies to rebuild that line in terms of the infrastructure? And if the answer is yes, it then means in this room, you're then supposed then to say you are part and parcel of that process. And I'm saying the answer is no. None of you are part of that process. It then asks the second question to say, on what basis then are we then talking about a transformed industry that all of us in this room supposed then to play a particular role in the infrastructure if we are not part of that thing? For me, it then means there is nothing for us without us. I'm not sure, Bafana, that thing, does that resonate? I'm saying there is nothing for this industry without you. You cannot then talk about the infrastructure development. You cannot talk about the transformation of the built environment if this industry, if Bbcbe is not playing any role. Hence, I'm saying there is nothing for us without us. Nobody can then talk about those issues if we're not playing any role. The third part for me, it then deals with the notion that, again, talks about the transmission lines. And I'll tell you later why I'm singling out these issues, because they require a particular action and a different outset and different outlook. Eskom has then built 14,000 kilometers of transmission lines in this country for the next coming period. On the 7th of October, Eskom is going to launch what is called a transmission company. You then ask yourself, if Eskom, they're going to build 14,000 kilometers of transmission lines, the Bbcbe, if they're not part of that thing, who's going to play the role of building those lines? And I'm saying, again, it becomes a question mark, a program director. It then means we are sleeping. If we then deny that we're not sleeping, it then means we've been sidelined or marginalized. So you can then make a pick to say either we're marginalized or we are sleeping, or in between. But me, I'm one person that I'm always taking a particular stance. I'm one person that you cannot second guess me on range of issues. And I think the colleagues that I work with, they will tell you that I'm one person that I'm firm and principled on a number of areas. I'm raising these issues because at the heart of an infrastructure development of the country, Bbcbe must be the cornerstone of any transformation project in the country. And if not, we cannot then talk about transformation in abstract. We cannot then talk about the set aside in abstract. We cannot talk about a strategic procurement in various subsectors of our economy if the members of Bbcbe, they're not anywhere, they're not being seen or found anywhere. And then again, I'm not talking about, now lately we use nice English words when people, they do wrong things. We talk about the construction mafias and this thing. A thug is a thug, a criminal is a criminal. So I'm not even talking about it. I'm saying if we don't find any member of Bbcbe in any form or shape across the infrastructure, it then means it's a problem to all of us. And then I'm saying we cannot then talk about transformation in abstract. And let me then deal with 4 or 5 areas so that we are all on the same page. The first thing that we need then to look at, program director, is what I call the strategic procurement. Is one component of the Public Procurement Act. And that strategic procurement has nothing to do with tenders. I'm saying it has nothing to do with tenders. Strategic procurement is when Barbara Gris in the rail infrastructure as a Minister of Transport comes to this organization to say, she wants to build a rail infrastructure for passengers. Now, she wants 20, 30 companies that they must then put a proposal together to rebuild the entire line for the next coming 20, 25 years. That is what is called strategic procurement. There's nothing to do with the tender. In other quarters, people, they will talk about unsolicited bid. But I'm saying in our legislation, this thing is defined as the strategic procurement. I'm saying we need then to put names of people that have out of this breakfast today, Bafana, need then to say they're going to engage Barbara Gris on how do we rebuild the entire rail system in the country for the next coming 20, 25 years, or at the back of strategic procurement. The second part of that, again, I know people, they will say, where do we get money? If we then get a 25-year concession to build a rail, all the institutions will be keen and willing then to fund that project. There's nothing to do with it, it's not a tender. The second part, we cannot then leave the Stellenbosch setting aside 33 billion rand, readily so, waiting for the transmission lines, because they want them to acquire 49% of the transmission lines. And I'm saying this thing, if again we don't catch a wake up, this thing is going to move with speed. And then I'm saying we need then to intercept the transmission lines before the launch on the 7th of October. Where again we need then to say to the ESCOM and to the Minister of Energy, Electricity, Dr. Hosien Soramukhopa, Bbcbe and other related organizations or sister organizations, they are willing to participate in the rebuild of the transmission lines in this country. Again, what we need a strategic procurement in terms of long-term rebuild and the maintenance of that line. And I'm saying, by virtue of doing that thing, again, funding and access to market will be the things of the past, not of the future. The third component for us is around the water and sanitation. We cannot then sit here and talk about a transformation, whereas majority of the people in this country that happens to be black, they don't have running water, they don't have sanitation. And this is the industry that must rebuild water, dams, and various other things. And I'm saying we did engage both the Minister of Water and Sanitation and various boards that we wanted to talk about strategic procurement. And I'm saying again, that is the third leg that this meeting today or this breakfast session need them to put names of people to deal with water and sanitation for the country at the back of strategic procurement. And if we're then to do that, I can tell you will then be achieve the notion of a black industrialist, because black industrialist is not something that it will then happen in abstract. It must be people that we see, that here is Bafana is owning a construction company or a built environment company. But again, that company must then look at the entire value chain, not only one component in terms of what other people will call it a vertical integration. That's how you can then rebuild these issues. Let me then conclude on two major issues. There is a BRICS meeting coming up on the 17th, 18th to the 23rd of October. That meeting deals with three things in the main. First is the energy configuration for the continent and for the country, and therefore we need them to be part and parcel of that conversation in terms of how then do we deal with the energy mix. The second part is the infrastructure around the rail development for the continent and the connectivity of people, and therefore we need them to be part of that in terms of partnering with global companies so that the transfer of skills and knowledge and the capacity remain and resides with us here. The third component is the B20 at the back of the G20. South Africa will be taking the chairmanship effective from November this year, post the Brazil summit, and therefore we need them to be ready in terms of projects and programs in the built environment for the continent. The last part, we need them to be alive to the grants, because in most cases, when there is a state visit, government, they conclude trade agreements that they are conditional upon grants that are given to a country, and that also then direct the state where they must then procure. And in most cases, those grants, they circumvent the provisions for local content, local provisions for state to procure and empower the local people. And I'm saying for us in the BBC, as the mother body, I guess for us, we need them to forge ahead in delivering and dealing with all these issues. And I think the challenge is on that program director. We want people that they will commit and then be ready and available to deal with these projects. Last week we had a meeting with 7 ministers dealing with reindustrialization. And the reason why we've done that, because we don't want them to talk theories, we want them to talk action-orientated, to say when, how, so that you can then track and trace the delivery of those projects. And I think with those few remarks, we'll be watching Bbcbe like a walk, so that all these projects need them to be implemented, so that forging ahead, we don't have to meet next year again at your meeting and you start complaining. We need them to move ahead to say, where are we? How many companies are they moving? Are we then seeing cranes all over the country in terms of developing these projects? I thank you.